Virgo 28, a bald-headed man. Of course, this is a very masculine image and refers to an extreme attitude of behavior which men usually get up to. The bald head is an indication of somebody who doesn't let their hair down. In other words, they pretty much control their emotional nature and deny that feminine softening that occurs because of emotionality. So that these are hard cases, sharp, focused, determined. And this really does have an ego quality to it often. There's the push of self, the thrust of projecting one's will into the world. And it's foolish for us to pretend this doesn't happen. And it's even foolish for us to depend that it shouldn't happen. It is a part of the human condition that men push. And the problem is not that they push. It is that the process that they go through in doing the pushing and achieving the results of that push, that process is not being handled very well. Old structures come into place. Things tend to solidify and crystallize into the old way of doing things. Well, life isn't old. Life is always new. So anything which is old and crystallized and formed into a way of being that's not going to change, it's got to be wrong, hasn't it? It can't suit the current times. But to crack open such a configuration, to break the power of the old, it takes a huge amount of focus, a huge amount of will. You can't bring down a 60-year-old, 100-year-old system of government just by saying, oh, look, we don't like it anymore. Can you change, please? Let's vote them out. That's not how governments of that type leave office. The structure needs to be cracked. And then the bald-headed man, theoretically or metaphorically, will come forward and assert great focus and great will in order to crack open something which is wrong. Now, in order to develop the quality which allows that, has the power, the personal power to act when nobody else can act, nobody else does act, sometimes an individual takes control because they can. To do that is not possible unless you've practiced doing that. So typically these people practice by asserting will into the world to see what they can achieve. And that usually is measured in terms of prestige and money, power. In doing this, you develop an appetite for it. You can't do it without that appetite. That appetite is the juice for working long hours and becoming disliked and not really having a soft side to your life, a family and you know, that kind of softer way of being. The price that you pay for that is heavy. That's a heavy price to pay for what you get. So these people tend to be motivated towards luxury and importance. And having achieved that, enabling them then, potentially at least, to crack open the old systems, they get seduced by that and caught up in the silliness of ever-perpetual movement towards something which is unattainable, like enough money. That's not a sensible concept, is it, for these people? For most people, they can't really understand that you can have enough money. And if you've got a lot, you want a lot more, typically. It's a disease, this lust for money and position and power. It's a mental illness. And the people who have it don't know that they have it, and our society even glorifies these people who are lost in their power and money lust. But it is a mental illness. It's certainly a spiritual illness. There's no question of that. But I think it's a psychological condition as well. Now, typically we try to contain such people within the needs of society, and we give them suits and other uniforms, like military uniforms and medical uniforms and all sorts of uniforms for the people who actually take life and death decisions and move huge amounts of money around and so on. We give them uniforms to make make us believe in the illusion that society controls them. It's not true. The individual is personally powerful. They're not subject to the control of the community. They will duck and weave around the laws, and they'll get their lawyers to work that through. There are some constraints, but things happen because of personal power in the world, not community power. That's an illusion that we like to live in because we're afraid of the opposite. But the king of the jungle is the lion, you know, the aggressor. So the idea here is that those of power should serve the community. And I think on a moral level we agree with this. And insofar as the quality of enacting personal power and cracking open that which is stuck, that requires a thrust, an aggressive, insensitive thrust. But we're asking these people to be as gentle as they can be in considering our community needs. So if, for example, your sun or moon or whatever is in this position, you'll have this to deal with in life. On the one hand, you might be potentially a very powerful person and have to cope with the seduction of that power and resist the power and at the same time claim it. Very strange thing to have to do, to claim power individually and then resist the temptation of abusing it. It's a very strange condition, that one. Because you don't know when it is appropriate to stop pushing. You don't know how powerful you could be if you pushed a bit harder. And when you push, there will be pushback. You will become resisted, very often disliked, thwarted in some way by the collective, the herd, who don't want any individual to raise their head above the pack. That scares the herd. So if you are a personally powerful person, then you need to deal with that. You will be frightening to some people. On the other hand, you can deal with this energy by being subject to that power. You might be the son or daughter of a very powerful man who is like this, who pushes, thrusts, does not see that other people suffer because of that, and is unable to be stopped. And you have to find a way with that. And there are ways to find. You can leave, just get out of the way. You can persuade, you can develop sort of softer powers to moderate these men. Because there are such women who moderate these men. The power behind the throne very often is a moderating power, the voice of constraint and moderation and wisdom and gentleness. So there's another approach. Or another is to become like that dominant person yourself and resist them with your own personal power. That's how you train to become powerful very often. You have a parent who's a bully and you have to resist that and become strong enough not to be bullied. That's one way to become powerful. So, no question about it, we're talking about personal power here and the dangers of it and what you're going to do with it, but also the need for it. The need for it in order for our community, in order for ourselves to stay up with the modern times, always changing.